Yeah. Okay. So Job is continuing to reply. He took, after the shortest chapter in Job, which is Job 25, Job takes quite a few chapters. I think there's 5 chapters, 6 chapters in response. And Job's final answer or plea with his so-called friends. In Job 26, 27, 28, we're kind of in the middle of his reply to Bildad, who really, Bildad brought up, who are you to try and stand innocent before God? Or there's got to be something in your life, something in your heart. Having a philosophy that says the wicked will always be punished and that the righteous will always prosper. Nothing wrong with that philosophy except for it's only when we get to eternity that will happen. And Bildad, Zophar, and Eliphaz have told Job, no, right now, on earth, the wicked will be destroyed and the righteous will flourish and prosper. Same false teaching that goes around today, saying if you're sick, if you're experiencing any kind of physical stuff, there's a spiritual problem. And the danger that's in that, I've shared, I think, with you before of my friends' parents that had a few miscarriages. And because of their wrapped up in this name it and claim it, fell from the faith. These were strong believers in God, but the church that they were going to taught if you miscarried, if you had some physical infirmity, there was some secret sin. It's the only way. See, it's the only way we can coincide. We can make it work with our belief. It can't be that we don't know why, which is what I have to say. It's what we have to say. I don't know why you lose a baby and another one is fully healthy. I don't know, but God has His reasons. God has a plan for everything, a purpose. In fact, He's glorified in those tragedies. We miss it. We won't know it, many of us, until we get to heaven. The reason why a child dies at such a young age, or an innocent man is suffering and put in prison and ultimately goes to the death penalty. That's happened. In fact, we're coming up on the first martyr in the book of Acts. The first martyr, really, of all. Stephen, an incredible man. Died way too soon. Died way too young. Yet, because of that tragedy, the early church, we're here today. The Fox's Books of Martyrs. If these, pardon my French, idiots of Job's friends, if they had been there in their philosophy, Stephen, you've got some sin in your life. You shouldn't be suffering at the hand of these people. You shouldn't be in prison. We wouldn't have part of the New Testament with the Apostle Paul being put in prison, writing the book of Romans, writing the epistle to the Philippians. Fools, this philosophy. Now, with that said, if this is the oldest book in the Bible, then there's we should give them a break, because they didn't have what you and I have, and that is, Job, it is written. This and this and this. Job, it has been written. No, they had, look at the heavens. Look at the animals. Look at the creation. And that was their way of knowing right and wrong. And what we're going to talk a little bit about, actually, in Job's, as Job continues his answer here, we learn, and what's fascinating is that how God has written on the heart of humankind His law. His law has been written on the heart on our hearts. And so that kind of comes to light too. Job chapter 29 verse 1. Moreover, Job continued his parable or his argument, his answer, and he said, "Oh, that I were as in months past, as in the days when God preserved me, when God's candle shined upon my head, and when by His light I walked through darkness, as I was in the days of my youth, when the secret of God was upon my tabernacle, when the Almighty was yet with me, when my children were about me, when I washed my steps with butter, and the rock poured me out rivers of oil." That's a poetic way of saying I had so much. I was increased with goods. That verse 29, chapter 29 could also be Job's reminiscing about his time of prosperous, great prosperity. That's what he's kind of going over in his mind, is going back on these times of great prosperity. When I went out to the gate through the city, when I prepared my seat in the city, the young men saw me and hid themselves. The aged men stood, respected me. The princes even refrained talking and laid their hands over their mouths. The nobles held their peace, their tongues cleaved to the roof of their mouth. When the ear heard me, then it blessed me. And when the eye saw me, it gave witness to me. Because I delivered the poor that cried, and the fatherless, and him that had none to help him, the blessing of him that was ready to perish came upon me. And I caused the widow's heart to sing for joy. I took care of the poor and the needy. I put on righteousness and it clothed me, being clothed in righteousness. My judgment was as a robe and as a diadem or a crown. I was eyes to the blind, and feet was I to the lame. I was a father to the poor, and the cause which I knew not I searched out. And I brake the jaws of the wicked, and plucked the spoil out of his teeth. Then I said, I shall die in my nest, or in my old age, and I shall multiply my days as the sand. My root was spread out by the waters, and the dew lay all night upon my branch. My glory was fresh in me, and my bow was renewed in my hand. Unto me men gave ear, and waited, and kept silence at my counsel. After my words they spake not again, and my speech dropped upon them, or solved their problems. And they waited for me as for the rain, and they opened their mouth wide as for the latter rain. If I laughed on them, they believed it not, and the light of my countenance they cast not down. I chose out their way, and sat chief, and dwelt as a king in the army, as one that comforts the mourners. Interesting. He's getting at, I'm the one mourning, and at one time I comforted those who mourn. You guys aren't comforting me. These friends were being lousy comforters. And we talked a lot about 1 Corinthians 13. You can, are you looking for the heater?
No, I'm just trying to get, looking for the fan.
The fan. Well,
It's that's overwhelming me, that smell.
well, we can go outside maybe.
Well, I opened those doors and I opened the back door and shut the kitchen door.
Oh, well, maybe the smoke detector will go off now and the fire department will go. Well, now we know why it's never been cleaned.
Yeah.
So the prosperity, the days of Job's fatness, riches, good times. We can all fall into this reminiscing, remembering the good times. It is good to count our blessings, as the old hymn, count your blessings, count them one by one, and it will amaze you, it will surprise you to see what the Lord has done. Count your many blessings, count them one by one. It's good for us to do that. And Job's simply remembering the times when he was honored, when young men and old men respected him. And remember, it's good to remember this, that this man is going to become very brutally honest. Well, he's been brutally honest. And it's good for us to remember that he gets real. And I think chapter 30 and 31 bring it out, but mostly chapter 30. He doesn't sugarcoat. And Job 29 and Job 30 go hand in hand. There really shouldn't be a pause, but what we're going to see is all that he just spoke of, all the honor, all the blessing, all of that is contrasted in chapter 30 now. But it starts with that great word that brings out the contrast. But now that they that are younger than I have me in derision, whose fathers I would have disdained to set with the dogs of my flock. Yea, whereto might the strength of their hands profit me, in whom old age was perished? For want and famine they were solitary, fleeing into the wilderness in former time, desolate and waste, who cut up mallows or leaves by the bushes and juniper roots for their meat. They were driven forth from among men. They cried after them as after a thief, to dwell in the cliffs of the valleys, in caves of the earth, and in the rocks. Among the bushes they brayed under the needles. They were gathered together, and they were children of fools, yea, children of base men. They were viler than the earth. And now I, in these worthless, lowest of lows, that's the whole idea. These are the nobodies of Job's day. These guys, now am I their song. Yes, I am their byword. They abhor me, they hate me, they flee far from me, and they spare not to spit in my face, because he has loosed my cord and afflicted me. They have also let loose the bridle before me. Upon my right hand rise the youth, and they push away my feet, or they trip me, and they raise up against me the ways of their destruction. They block my path. They set forward my calamity. They have no helper. There's no mercy. When anybody ever see a little, elementary school? Kids are brutal. youths are relentless. These guys show no mercy. They are. It's very evident. Becomes very clear the sin nature when you see how brutal children truly can be. Somebody said if you had a disability of any kind, you don't want to be in a room full of children under 10 years old. They could actually destroy you as a handicap, making fun of you, and if it's not just emotionally, physically, they will jump on you. No supervision, no parental. You want to be in a room full of people in their right mind that have common sense, have some form of respect. That's the idea here with these youths. They spit at Job, probably disgusted with him, and I'll talk a little bit about that because we forget Job's state as we read this. It's so beautifully written. It's all poetic and it's nice, but so they show no mercy. The end of verse 13. They have no helper. That's the idea. Verse 14. They came upon me as a wide breaking in of many waters. In the desolation they rolled themselves upon me. Terrors are turned upon me. They pursue my soul as the wind, and my welfare passes away as a cloud. All my riches means nothing now. And now my soul is poured out upon me. The days of affliction have taken hold upon me. My bones are pierced in me in the night seasons. My sinews take no rest. What's that, sinews? What's your...
Muscles.
Muscles?
Yeah, well, sinews is bones.
Oh, okay, bones.
Is muscles.
I forgot to write the... there's another one we can learn from. The old... It's neat to see all the old King James words and learn from them. By the great force of my disease is my garment changed. It binds me about as the collar of my coat. He hath cast me into the mire, and I am become like dust and ashes. I cry unto thee, and thou dost not hear. I stand up, and thou regard me not. Thou art become cruel to me with thy strong hand. Thou oppose thyself against me. Thou lift me up to the wind. Thou cause me to ride upon it and dissolve my substance. For I know that thou wilt bring me to death and to the house appointed for all living, or to the cemetery. Howbeit he will not stretch out his hand to the grave, though they cry in his destruction. Did not I weep for him that was in trouble? Was not my soul grieved for the poor? When I looked for good, then evil came upon me. And when I waited for light, there came darkness. My bowels boiled and rested not. The days of my affliction prevented me. I went mourning without the sun. I stood up and I cried in the congregation. I am a brother to dragons and a companion to owls. My skin is black upon me, and my bones are burned with heat. My harp also is turned to mourning, and my organ into the voice of them that weep. Again, it's this. We need to be reminded that this man named Job is not a poet on a podium. Rather, he's in his own pus, his own blood, his own ashes, in dirt, crying out in agony. Remember, he's got this flesh-eating disease, boils all over him. Is it no wonder the children, the youths, would come by and spit on him and mock him and make fun of him? Doesn't make it right, but we know what children are like. We know, and talk about a contrast. I was at the city, I had a seat at the gate. Job, go back to chapter 1, you see what a prominent man Job was. He was wealthy. He was increased with goods. He was important. He was a wise man giving advice and counsel to those who would listen. And now he's become a byword. He's become something that others are disgusted with. Something and someone that others are just can't, even if they wanted to, they'd have such a hard time respecting. They mock and they scoff and they just continue to make him and Job's at the end of himself. If you want to know a little commentary on youths making fun of the elderly, go to 2 Kings 2, verse 23. You see a few youths making fun of Elisha for being bald, remember? God takes this seriously, this kind of disrespect. It doesn't matter what the guy looks like. It doesn't matter what he's going through. This is a righteous, according to God, back in Job chapter 1, this man, Job, is perfect and upright. In fact, we're told Job did not sin in all of this. When Job would reply, when Job was defending and rather just letting his friends know he's innocent, and it's going to, actually chapter 31 is all about that, the innocency, pleading his case of innocency. Chapters 29 could be just summed up as history, past history. Chapter 30 that we just read is his present condition, present affliction. And chapter 31 here is his plea of innocence, really making that case. Look, if I've done this, then yeah, I do deserve what you're saying I deserve and what I got. And so, verse 31, or chapter 31, verse 1, I had this verse underlined as a young man in youth group. It was one of the first verses I had memorized, actually, Job 31:1. I made a covenant with mine eyes. Why then should I look upon a young woman? To have this determination as a young man. Why even waste my time if it's not going to be my wife? Why do I search here and there? And today, man, it's at our fingertips. It is awful. This whole billion-dollar industry of pornography, but it needs to be addressed. It needs to be talked about because too many sweep it under the rug and act like there's nothing there. But it's killing families. It's destroying marriages, and it's ultimately it will ruin your relationship with God. That's the truth of the matter. And the best thing you could do, 1 John 1:9. And there's other scriptures, I'm forgetting the other ones. Confess your faults one to another. James talks about confess your faults one to another. Those brothers that you can go to, sisters, holding each other accountable. It's a waste of time to be looking at another, and he's going to get even more serious. It's going to become, as he brings up, adultery. For what portion of God is there, verse 2, from above, and what inheritance of the Almighty from on high? God sees it all. Why would I do what David, we're going to see, we did see back in 1st, 2nd Samuel, 1st and 2nd Kings, David in Bathsheba, that tragic event. Is not destruction to the wicked and a strange punishment to the workers of iniquity? Doth not he see my ways and count all my steps? I have, if, now here's the way of the poet. There's going to be a psalm that's just like this. There's a small glimpse of this same type of thing, which we'll kind of look at. Actually, maybe we'll jump over there real quick. It's only a couple verses. Psalm 137 verse 5 and 6. This is kind of the idea that we're going to see with Job's writing. It helped me to go through this chapter and see Job's not the only one that writes like this, that sounds like this when he talks. David sounded just like him, or the psalmist here in Psalm 137 verse 5. If I forget you, O Jerusalem, let my right hand forget her cunning. If I do not remember you, let my tongue cleave to the roof of my mouth. If I prefer not Jerusalem above my chief joy. If I am guilty of forgetting all about Israel, all about God's promises, God's promised land, and thinking of Jerusalem as just another nation, if I'm guilty of that, let the tongue of my cleave to the roof of my mouth. In other words, to be punished, to be thirsty, and to have this judgment come upon me. That's the idea, and we're going to see. If my, verse 5, back to Job 31, verse 5, if I have walked with vanity, or if my foot has hasted to deceit, let me be weighed in an even balance, that God may know mine integrity. If my steps has turned out of the way, and mine heart walked after mine eyes, and if any blot hath cleaved to mine hands, then let me sow, and let another eat. Let my offspring be rooted out, if mine heart have been deceived by a woman, or if I have laid wait at my neighbor's door. Then let my wife grind unto another, and let others bow down upon her. For this is an heinous crime, yea, it is an iniquity to be punished by the judges. For adultery, sleeping with another man's wife, sleeping with another man's husband, is a fire that consumes to destruction, and would root out all mine increase. If I did despise the cause of my manservant and my maidservant, when thou contended with me, what then shall I do when God rises up, and when he visits? What shall I answer him? Did not he that made me in the womb make him, and did not one fashion us in the womb? I have withheld the poor from their desire, or if I have withheld the poor from their desire, or caused the eyes of the widow to fail, or I've eaten my morsel myself alone, been selfish, and the fatherless has not eaten thereof. For from my youth he was brought up with me, as with a father, and I have guided her from my mother's womb. If I have seen any perish for want of clothing, or any poor without covering, if his loins have not blessed me, and if he were not warned with the fleece of my sheep, if I have lifted up my hand against the fatherless, when I saw my help in the gate, then let mine arm fall from my shoulder blade. Let my arm fall off. If I haven't given help to the poor, let my arm fall off, and my arm be broken from the bone. Verse 23, for destruction from God was a terror to me, and by reason of his highness I could not endure. For I have made gold my hope, if I have made gold my hope, Job has not done these things. He's making that very point. If I have made gold my hope, or have said to the fine gold, thou art my confidence, if I rejoiced because my wealth was so great, and because mine hand had gotten so much, if I beheld the sun when it shined, and the moon walking in brightness, and my heart has been secretly enticed, or my mouth has kissed my hand, this also were an iniquity to be punished by the judge. For I should have denied the God that is above. Some commentators insert there, and I like it, at the end of verse 28, I should have denied the God that is above the moon and the sun. Because, remember, who did Abram probably worship? Actually, Terah, the father of Abraham, most likely was an idol-worshipping Gentile who worshipped the moon and the sun, the Chaldeans. And Ur was close, most likely, to the place that Job was from, the land of Uz. They don't know for sure, but most likely. And the language here indicates others were around him worshiping the moon and the stars and the sun. I should deny then the God who is above all those things. If I rejoiced at the destruction of him that hated me, or lifted up myself when evil found him, neither have I suffered my mouth to sin by wishing a curse to his soul. If the men of my tabernacle said not, oh, that we had of his flesh, we cannot be satisfied. Until he gets what he deserves, we can't be satisfied. The stranger did not lodge in the street, but I opened my doors to the traveler. If I covered my transgression as Adam by hiding mine iniquity in my bosom, did I fear a great multitude, or did the contempt of families terrify me, that I kept silence and went not out of the door? Oh, that one would hear me. Behold, my desire is that the Almighty would answer me, and that mine adversary, my enemy, had written a book. Surely I would take it upon my shoulder and bind it as a crown to me. I would declare unto him the number of my steps. As a prince would I go near unto him. If my land cry against me, or that the furrows likewise thereof complain. If I have eaten the fruits thereof without money, or have caused the owners thereof to lose their life, let thistles grow instead of wheat, and cockle instead of barley, or weeds instead of barley. The words of Job are ended. Are you glad? He could have kept going, probably. But the words of Job are ended for now. The next time we hear from him, it's not until God speaks. And we're going to stop there tonight, but that's plenty to chew on. Something that should be mentioned is that that verse 1, Job 31:1, it's an implication that it's a heart attitude. It is for you and I to understand God sees our heart. It reminded me of Mark, why should we look lustfully at a young woman? Why should we look lustfully at anything? Matthew chapter 5. Matthew chapter 5, verse 27. Jesus says it best. And it reminded me of this, Matthew 5:37, where Jesus says, see, did I write that down wrong? 27. Matthew 5:27. Ye have heard it, that it was said by them of old time, Thou shalt not commit adultery. But I say unto you, that whosoever looks on a woman to lust after her in his heart, has committed adultery with her already in his heart. And it goes on here, if your right eye offends you, pluck it out. Cast it from you. If your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off. Cast it off from you. And if you took that literally, and you plucked out your right eye, you'd still have your left eye causing problems, wouldn't you? If you took that literally, cut off your right hand, you'd still have your left hand to mess you up and get you into trouble. And what Jesus is ultimately getting at is it's your heart attitude. It's your heart. What do you fill with your... What's your time filled with? When we're in those moments of weakness, when we're alone, these things, the psalmist put it this way in Psalm 101:3. I will not put any unclean thing, any worthless thing. This should be on every television set. This scripture, Psalm 101:3. I'll turn over there so I don't misquote it. Psalm 101, verse 3. I will set no wicked thing before mine eyes. I hate the work of them that turn aside. It shall not cleave unto me. That was David's heart. I will not set any wicked thing before mine eyes. Psalm 101:3.
It's the Halloween psalm.
Yeah. Anything. It's just a... In fact, Psalm 16 says, I have set the Lord always before me. You can't just, well, I'm not going to have any wicked thing. You've got to replace that with something. You can't just sober up. You got a sober sinner, right? You can't just go through the 12 steps. Then guess what? You got pride filling your heart where you're counting every year, and not just year, every day that you've been sober. Why would you do that? Is there any other reason than pride? No. But Jesus got to the heart. He always did. Gets to the root of the issue, and that's the heart. The heart it's deceitful. And it falls into lust. We lust after things. He touched on lust, and then he goes into dishonesty. We have a tendency, a very natural tendency. You want to know that? Just ask your kids when you come into the room after they've been fighting, whose fault is it? Or who did that? Who did? It's very natural to them to be dishonest and throw their sister, their brother, under the bus. Grace and Faith made me laugh this morning, and they were here early, and one of them got the dragon toy thing out and walked in. Who did this? Grace, Faith. Grace. It was just the perfect, yeah.
Well, you can't tell who's who.
Yeah, you can't get to the bottom of it anyways. Glad you guys pierced the ears, though. That helped. Faith's got the earring, so.
Yeah.
But that's how we are. We're dishonest at heart. And Job was actually saying, if I have been dishonest, if there's any of this in me, I made a covenant with mine eyes. I haven't been lustful. There's not some secret sin like you guys are getting at, like they have been accusing Job of, dishonesty. And adultery is not just another sin. Adultery, in fact, Proverbs 6, I love this. This is a good one for anytime you're talking about adultery, Proverbs 6, verse 27. Yeah, Proverbs 6, starting at verse 27. Can a man take fire in his bosom and his clothes not be burned? Can he go and walk on hot coals and his feet not be burned? So is he that goes after his neighbor's wife. Whosoever touches her shall not be innocent. Men do not despise a thief. If a thief goes to steal something because he's hungry, if he be found, he can restore it sevenfold. He shall give all the substance of his house. But whoever commits adultery with a woman lacks understanding. He that does it destroys his own soul. A wound and dishonor shall he get. His reproach shall not be wiped away. For the jealousy and rage of a man, of a husband, therefore he will not spare in the day of vengeance. In other words, you can't just pay the husband off. Say, sorry, I did that to your wife. For a man that's gone through that, a husband who has been burned in that way, there's no recompense. There's no restoration. You cannot pacify that wrath. Thief comes in, steals your money. Okay, he can do his time, pay, But there's something in adultery we need to understand. There's something about sleeping with another man's husband or another man's wife, another wife's husband, whatever it may be. This whole thing of adultery is, we know it speaks of, what does marriage speak of? It's our relationship with the Father, with the Son. How that God would find for His one and only Son a bride. And that's you and I. At one time, Israel was. But read the book of Hosea, they screwed up. Man. Taking bribes. You learn what whoredom really is. It's a nasty word, but it's becomes very clear when you look at the nation of Israel, what they did. And how that God is so patient, so long-suffering. He's not willing that any should perish. In fact, the very end of Job 31, we'll get to it. I forgot, I was skimming through 31. So that's adultery. Make sure you jot that down. Proverbs 6, 27 through 35. It's not taken lightly. There's no restoration. There's no restitution, I should say, for that. And then this whole thing of treating your manservant, your maidservant. Remember, Job was wealthy. He would have had servants and employees, we would call them today. This whole thing is written, and I love this is written before the law. He brought up Adam. Later in verse 33, brings up Job knew about Adam and Eve. And he knew that all men, he didn't need some constitution, some history book to let him know that all men were created equal. He didn't need somebody flying a flag and putting a bumper sticker on their car letting them know that all men are created equal. Why? Because God has written His Word on our hearts. His law has been written on our hearts. And Job says it so clearly in verse 15. Did not He that made me in the womb make you also? Make my servant? Make the African American? Make the Chinese American? Make the Japanese? Make the Mexican? Did not the same God who formed me in the womb make everyone? God is the maker. He's the potter. We're just dirt clods. Some of us dirtier than others. But we're just clay in the hands of the potter, the hands of the master. We all bleed the same. We all, there's no difference. I like this quote. Every single person that you will ever meet in your life, every single person is better than you and better than me at something. Every single person that you look at throughout this world, no matter where they're from, no matter who they are, where they were born, what race they are, what gender they are better than you, they are better than me at something. It's important to remember that. It keeps us from getting arrogant, from getting prideful, from getting just stagnant, not fun to be around. Do you really believe that? Do you know that there are people who are more talented than you, more gifted than you? And in fact, Philippians 2 takes it further. They are better than you. Esteem others as not just equal to you and getting the same pay as you get, but actually taking it further, they're better. This is so huge, and our society thinks it's the big issue is this whole thing of equality. But really, from the very beginning, this has been written on the heart of man. Romans 1 makes it clear too. We know what's right and what's wrong. We've just decided to suppress it in ways. And then the treating of the poor and the widow. We know from the end of the book of James, this is true religion. The only time the word religion is a good thing is when it refers to this poor and needy and the widows. And one to jot down is Proverbs 21:13. You probably have heard that one too. 21:13. Proverbs 21:13. Whoever stops his ears at the cry of the poor, he also shall cry himself, but not be heard. I like that. Proverbs 21, verse 13. And the whole issue of not being compassionate and giving, generous to the poor and to the needy, we need to understand Job was this way. Job had a lot and he gave a lot, where the poor and the needy were not starving, were not hungry, when he had it in his power to give it. Proverbs 3 this morning was talking about that. You don't tell your neighbor that, you go and come back tomorrow when it's in your hand to give it to him. You just don't do that. That's sin. In fact, Ezekiel 16, I just learned this tonight. The whole reason Sodom and Gomorrah is judged. Yeah, we all think of homosexuality as a big part of it, and that is. But the whole issue behind it all, Ezekiel 16 actually makes it clear. They shut the cry of the poor. They shut it out. They were increased with wealth and with goods, and they were just greedy, selfish with it. Pride. Again, the root issue behind everything. So that whole thing with the poor and the needy is a huge issue as well. And greed and idolatry, which comes into, I have made gold my hope. Many have made gold their hope today. Money. And it's become an idol. People spend, 60 hours of their life, of a week of their life, 60 hours is spent on the almighty dollar. And they come and spend maybe a half an hour to an hour in a church building, and man, that's the end of the world. How dare he go on that long? And don't worry, I would still share that if it was only 20 minutes into the thing. But it's true how we can fall into that idolatry. That's what it is. You're giving your life, your time, your energy, your effort, your best. You're giving your best at work. And then when you're here, you're just kind of, yeah, I'm present. And you're not here, contributing and giving all and doing as much as you could be. God wants us to stir those gifts up, doesn't He? And Job was a man who could have, and he didn't, take hope in his riches, in his wealth. And look, if he had done that, it left him empty. We're coming out of, well, that not necessarily the shutdown and all that, but the wildfires, I think, above even this whole shutdown. You learn from every devastation that you go through. And I think the wildfires showed us very clear, it should be a clear reminder to us where your wealth is, where your health, where your treasures are. They're just up in flames. One day it's a sure thing. One day, man, it's the nicest house, and you drive by those neighborhoods, and I've worked a lot in those places and seen how it's a heap, it's ashes, and how people have ruined marriages, ruined childhoods, chasing after that big house, that big dream, that big thing, whatever it is. And man, it's just all around us, even though we've had these wildfires come through. Are you saying that was God that sent the wildfire? Could have been. I don't pretend to know. I know that every devastation, everything that happens for a reason. I know that. And you can learn from it, or you can get bitter. You can get better, or you can get bitter. So Job would be among those who would say, stop living for yourselves and give to others. Jesus, in the book of Acts, we're going to see, Jesus said, it's one of the few things that's not recorded in the Gospels, but Jesus said it is more blessed to give than to receive. And too many of us don't really believe that. Wow.
Happy New Year.
Happy, yeah. I guess
You heard
so.
the turkeys after that?
I know. Somebody could be hunting them turkeys. Elmer Fudd's out there tonight. Well, if you weren't awake, now you are, right? But watching out for that idolatry. In 1 Timothy 6, I don't need to go there, do I? We brought nothing into this world. You're not going to take anything with you out. Godliness with contentment is great gain. And don't be greedy for things that you ought not to have. Health, wealth, and sleep. Somebody said this too. I forget where this one came from too. Health, wealth, and sleep is only really appreciated when it's interrupted. That's good. That's Job in a nutshell. Health, wealth, and sleep. They are really only appreciated when they're interrupted. We know that, don't we? And so Job, all the respect is gone. They're making fun of old Job. He went through that. He's pleaded his case. He is innocent. We know that because we have chapter 1 and chapter 2. But he's heartbroken. He's in despair. He's depressed. He's confused. And don't miss his attitude right near the end. And that's the same attitude that Jesus had on the cross after they spit on him, just like they would spit on Job. He says, I didn't rejoice, verse 29, if I rejoiced at the destruction of him that hated me, or lifted up myself when evil was found on him. Think about that during this time of interrogating corruption in our nation. Don't be wishing evil on anyone. If evil be found on him, then okay. But don't be wishing it. Don't be ready to rejoice when
Bad things happen.
yeah. And Ezekiel 33:11 is the one to have tattooed on you. Ezekiel 33:11, God says, I take no pleasure in the death of the wicked. I take no pleasure in even we got him. You know, he got what he deserved. That's human. That's human. To want the enemy and our own personal enemy above others, to want them to get what's coming to them, you know, that kind of thing. The Lord knows what's coming. And if anything, Job teaches us, and what we gather together like this, I don't know what 2021 is going to bring. We don't know what's around the bend. But we're here on a Sunday night, and we're getting ready. Getting prepared. Prepared for what? Whatever's coming. He's in control. I want to have a closeness to him. Job was going through this time of just immense, there's a portion in there I meant to touch on a little bit, but where he didn't feel the closeness that he had before with God. And we can get to those same points. We can get to those same valleys where it's like, where are you, God? You were here before, but now when I need you most. And just to stay close to him. And I really believe, and we know that God had Job go through all of this so that Job would get closer to God. And his relationship would be even sweeter. From all of the bitterness, all of the hardships. And we're going to see trials turn to gold. Those times of despair and times of hardship, we're going to see the eternal value in them one day. And it's just important to keep our eyes on him. Amen? Amen.